Hello, I'm Chris Burns, and welcome to The Network, hard talk with a matrix of newsmakers. At issue in this program, it's a political showdown with Europe-wide implications. In Germany's parliamentary election, can Chancellor Merkel's CDU and CSU save their coalition with the Free Democrats? Or, as tensions simmer in crisis-stricken EU countries, are enough German voters fed up with bailouts to vote otherwise? Could the FDP fall below the 5% required to stay in the Bundestag, forcing the Christian Democrats to form a so-called grand coalition with the Social Democrats? Could the anti-Euro party, Alternative for Germany, play spoiler and weaken Merkel? Could a strong showing by the Greens make them kingmakers for the left or right? As an anxious Europe watches and worries. Our guests in this edition of the network here in the European Parliament in Brussels, Leinen, a German member of the Socialists and Democrats in the European Parliament. In Berlin, Stefan Gerold of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, the CDU-CSU-supported think tank. And also in Berlin, Josef Janning of the German Council on Foreign Relations. A question to all of you, starting with Jo. Has Chancellor Merkel been too tough or not tough enough with countries like Greece? Will there be a third Greek bailout?
The austerity policy was one-sided, and I think the measures have been too short-sighted and too tough. And is no doubt after the German elections we need a new package, a third package for Greece.
Stefan, you know, your finance minister Schäuble said that there will be a third Greek bailout, and that caused quite a bit of consternation among a lot of people in Germany. What do you think?
I think that the austerity policy hasn't been either too tough or not tough enough. I think our principle was that we would provide solidarity against financial solidity. And if there is a third bailout necessary in a couple of years' time, and that was what Finance Minister Schäuble said, we will have to go for it.
Josef, too tough or not tough enough, and what impact on the election?
Well, she's been tough, and I think it's tough enough. The third bailout is not a bailout, so far at least. Schäuble didn't speak about a bailout. He spoke about another package, an aid and assistance package to Greece.
Well, most people are calling it a bailout because there will be some sort of cutting him slack, but
a full bailout will be a different thing. I think the criticism that is to be made is not about toughness, not about conditionality, but is about are we doing enough to aid these governments, these governments under enormous pressure to put on stage a major turnaround in the governance of their country. And that's where I believe EU member states need to help more.
Okay. Former Chancellor Gerhard Schröder says Merkel is covering up the true cost of the Greek bailouts. Merkel says it's Schröder's fault that Greece entered into the euro in the first place. Where do you stand on this?
The member states got the clear recommendation by the European Commission, by the European Central Bank, that we could adopt Greece. So there was not really a choice but to accept Greece as one of the eurozone members. The mistakes and the deficits we have seen now, and of course Greece has to do big reforms. But the one-sided austerity policy, again, in the last 2-3 years, is a mistake.
Stefan, where do you stand on this?
I do disagree on this point with Mr. Leinen, because I think that you will have to take your population with you when you do austerity policy, when you do exercise solidarity with other countries. And I don't think that there were other means that we could implement that a German population, Finnish population, Dutch population, what have you, could have accepted.
Josef, doesn't this mean, though, that the SPD and the CDU-CSU share some of that blame for how things were managed, and perhaps other parties could benefit from this controversy?
Well, they sure do share some of the blame. There were good reasons at the time to take in Greece, despite of the somewhat questionable numbers. But Greece has lost a decade for reform. And now, the pressure is even higher. So I don't really think that at the end of the day, other parties may be truly benefiting from it because the issues remain on the table.
The German economy grew by 0.7% in the second quarter. There was a federal budget surplus in the first half of the year. How can the SPD attack Merkel's economic policy if it seems to be working?
We have unfair wages. More than 7 million people are working below wages that they can live off. And we have many adults that are poor. So it looks good, but it is not good. And I think a next government has to readjust and rebalance our economy and our society. And that's the big point for social democracy in Germany.
Stefan, that was quite an issue in the debate. How does that come out in the image for the CDU-CSU?
As a consequence of bad policy by the governments of the Greens and the Social Democrats in between 1998 and 2005, Germany had nothing to contribute to any bailout, to anything. Angela Merkel made it quite clear in the debate. German economy got back on track, and people are much better off today than they were in 2005.
Josef, what about the people who got left behind, though? Could there be enough people like that who would vote for other parties?
The essential quarrel among the parties is not about these votes, but is about the middle class. It's not the super rich, and it's not the very poor, but it's the middle classes who feel that in a certain way they will have to put up the money for all of this. So I think essentially what the parties need to communicate to the people is, how do you people in the middle make your own living and your future, and we get this house in order.
Okay, and how much could this Alternative for Germany party, the party that just sprang up, how much could that play spoiler for Madame Merkel? How do you see that, Jo?
Yeah, of course, they are a factor in the elections. I would not underestimate their potential to attract voters. I hope they will not go beyond the 5% threshold, but if they come to 3–4%, that would hurt the one or the other party. I think it would hurt more the Christian Democrats.
Well, Stefan, how much is the CDU-CSU nervous about the Alternative for Germany?
I'm more concerned, actually, with themselves being represented in the European Parliament, because there we do have a 3% threshold at the moment. We don't know whether it's going to hold in front of the German Constitutional Court. So in that case, AfD people could well be present in the European Parliament. Okay,
Josef, what about these alternative parties, Alternative for Deutschland, but also the FDP? How much could that cause havoc for the CDU-CSU? And do you see a grand coalition as being the most likely solution between the SPD and CDU-CSU?
Well, I don't see the anti-Euro party being stronger than about 2 or 2.5%, because I believe that at the end, when they go to the election booth, the majority of the German voters is pretty realistic and pretty rational. And they don't really buy this Deutschmark nostalgia. So I think that in the end, there is a good chance for the current coalition to be re-elected, but it might be a very small margin. There's also a chance for a grand coalition, but that depends very much on the specific outcomes of the results for the smaller parties.
Josef, thank you very much. We're out of time, unfortunately. Would love to continue. But the discussion does continue, of course. I'd like to thank our guests, Jo Leinen, Stefan Gerhold, and Josef Janning. I'm Chris Burns, and until next time, thanks for connecting with The Network.